Hey folks, Rob here, bringing you another video. This is a Tactics 101 on Vehicle Bypass Movement Sleaze Freeze. I think we all know what that is. Those of you who may be new to the game, this is a tactic whereby you take a vehicle from your OB and you park it beside an enemy unit. And because of the rules where you're not allowed to fire outside of a hex if there's an enemy unit inside your hex, you basically freeze that unit. Now, depending on the type of vehicle it is, it's whether it's button up or open topped, what have you, you could freeze multiple levels of a building and basically neutralize their effectiveness. And what that does is it then allows all your other units freedom of movement in a certain area to do whatever they want, and they don't have to worry about getting shot up. So we're going to cover all that. So because AFVs are so powerful in this game, they do many functions. You can see some of them that are going to be there. And by the way, what I'm going to reference basically is in journal number 12. First things first, I should mention an errata. I recently did a video on defense advanced concepts, and I mistakenly attributed the article to journal 11. It's actually journal 12, the dose of antifreeze from Peter Struijf. The dose of antifreeze. So it's journal 12. Highly recommend the article. It's a good 8-page article on VBM Sleaze freeze and how you can compensate your game to accommodate that. Anyway, so because AFVs serve such a powerful purpose in the game, they can give you cover for your units. They're mobile gun platforms and MG platforms. Quite deadly in close combat, especially the German ones, when you start implementing things like the combat shotgun, the Nahverteidigungswaffen, what as I call it, or mobile smoke platforms, all those kinds of things. They're very versatile and useful, and because they're invulnerable to small arms fire, barring lucky hits from your machine guns, for example, you can almost move around with impunity around the battlefield. Now, yes, there are anti-armor weapons. You got Piats, bazookas, what have you, or Panzerschrecks and Panzerfaust, but not every unit has those. And barring those, they very effective. And like I said, they're pretty well immune to most attacks. The exception to that, of course, is close combat. You have to take your chances, but if you play them smart, you can mitigate your damage potential by selectively choosing who you get close to with your vehicles. So what we're going to do is, using this article, Dose of Antifreeze, as a base, we're just going to cover basically, again, how to deal with Sleaze freeze. But first of all, we're going to talk about how you do it and why you want to do it. So there's basically 4 reasons that I'm going to pick up to why you'd want to do it. The first one is you want to strip concealment. So there's a rule in the concealment table. It's written in the small print at the bottom with all the cases. So case A, whenever a vehicle finishes its movement phase in a hex with a concealed unit, the concealment comes off. You strip concealment, which is very handy. So if you ever want to strip concealment from a unit, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can send a unit in to bump it, and it'll strip concealment, or possibly at the loss of your unit. Or you can send in a vehicle to finish its movement phase in that hex. In which case you're going to strip the concealment that way as well. Again, there's certain risk entailed. You may end up bumping a unit you don't want to fight in close combat, or something else quite deadly. But again, that's just one way that you can do this. You want a VBM's concealed stack to reveal what's there. Another one that you want to do is you want to pin down an enemy unit, and this is where the sleaze comes in, so that your own infantry has freedom of movement. For example, in this particular scenario here, we have broken units over here on the left. We have a concealed guy over here on the right, and we have these guys here that I want to move into this factory building. Now, I can't move these guys first because this open ground means they're going to get shot up. So if I want to move my Stug into this location, I'm going to, first of all, strip concealment from this guy, assuming nothing else happens. These guys do not engage in hand-to-hand. And these guys are now unable to fire outside of the hex because according to A7.212, you cannot fire outside your own hex when you have an enemy in your hex, which means I can move around wherever I want. As long as I'm not inside this hex, I can go wherever I want. I can park myself right here, and he cannot do anything to me. All right, so you want to basically pin down an enemy, not pin. You want to prevent them from firing outside their hex by occupying it. You also can cut off a fire lane. So if we give this guy a medium, or let's give this guy a light here, for example, and for whatever reason he had a fire lane going somewhere, and you want to cut that off so that your units can move around without being intercepted by a fire lane, then the same thing, you can enter his hex, and per 9.223, you'll be able to cut off his fire lane as well. And then lastly, it's less risky to be in bypass than it would be to pay the half your movement point cost to enter a building. Then you risk a bog check becoming immobilized, or bogged down, I should say. And if it's a building, you risk maybe falling into a cellar if it's a single hex building. So rather than risk all of that, you can just pay the extra cost for going into bypass. So that's basically the 4 reasons why you'd want to be in bypass in the first place. 3 of them because it'll help you impact the enemy's ability, and the 4th one is just safer for your vehicle to stay in motion and bypass in an enemy hex than it might be to enter a single building and fall through into the cellar. It's a rare chance, but you never know, it could happen. And if it's one of your few pieces of armor, you may not want to risk that for a non-important objective. And of course, there's also reasons when you do not want to do it. As for those of you guys who watched my game, I brought in one of these Mark IVs, and I naively, stupidly, basically walked it up this path here. The guy was playing Dave. He had a concealed 648 here. I knew it was an airborne unit. I wasn't sure if it was a 458 or a 648. And I had a couple units, infantry units here in the street. So I'm thinking, I'm going to bring my tanks. It just came on the board. I want to do exactly what I thought it was park it here, strip concealment, and prevent him from firing on my infantry that were going to move close, who could then advance into close combat. But I forgot about the extreme lethality of an elite airborne unit, who are stealthy, by the way, who did street fighting ambush on my vehicle with a gammon bomb, which is like an ATMM, and were able to destroy my tank. So it was a horrendous move, complete blunder, and soured basically the whole scenario for me because of that was a dumb move to make. So you've got to be careful when you apply this VBM move. A 648 is an elite unit. In a bridge too far, they're allowed to have gammon bombs, which, like I said, is an ATMM. That gives them a -2 to their CCV roll. So they already start with a base 5. You have street fighting, gives them a -1. You have a gammon bomb, which is a -2. I had motion, which is a +2, so they're still at a -1. And you start tacking on leadership, and starts to add up. And it quickly turns into a very good die roll chance of your vehicle going up in flames. And of course, he rolled really well, like a 3 or something, which why it was ablaze. And when you also tack on maybe their assault engineers, you had another modifier. Again, street fighting is very deadly for vehicles. When you start fighting in urban territory, another reason why you may want to avoid going into vehicles bypass with an enemy unit, even a 447, maybe not a conscript, but a first line unit with street fighting, maybe with a leader, has a decent chance of ruining your vehicle. You may want to avoid doing that as well. The most important thing you have to think about with vehicles bypass in an enemy hex is your MP expenditure. So let's look at that. Now, so our Stug here has 13 move. So let's do a movement, okay? So we're going to start off for 1. We're going to come here for 2. We want to go into bypass for a total of 4. We now have 9 movement points to spend. You cannot just say, I'm going to spend 9 points in delay. A lot of people do that. We used to do that, Dave and I, but we're getting better at that. You can't do that. You can only spend delay when you stop. So that means we have to spend a 5th point to stop. Now we're stopped. Now the defender can decide to do his close combat. So when you look at the table for the CCV list, we are no longer motion, which means we're not paying the +2 anymore. So we've just given the enemy a huge advantage because we ended up paying for the stop move. And we still have 8 more points to go. So assuming this is not effective, now we still have 8 points that we have to spend in delay. What if they start bringing on anti-armor set? Maybe there's a hip guy here with a Piat and he wants to fire, what have you. You have to be wary of how you spend your movement points. All right, so a smarter and a more correct way to do this would be you spend a point to start up. You can spend, let's say, 5 points to move into this hex here for a total of 6, which still gives us 7 movement points. And then you can spend those 7 to enter into bypass for a total of 13, which means that you're going to be ending up in motion. All right, so you're not spending points to stop start in an enemy hex and becoming more of an eligible target to be destroyed. All right, the important thing, remember, to bypass is, depending on what you want to do, you want to end your movement phase in the hex. You want to be in motion, which means you have to use up all of your movement points. And because of the peculiarities of the movement rules, you cannot just delay in while your vehicle's moving. You can only delay when it's stopped. So what you want to do is you want to pay more movement points than required to enter a hex to use up all of your extra movement points, because you want to be in motion so you get that extra +2 in the close combat. It's really helpful to have a +2 going against their attack. All right, so just remember that. Very important that you get the +2 in the close combat die roll. All right, so let's look at dealing with Sleaze now. So first things we've got to talk about is reaction fire. Now, there's we're only going to talk about the vehicles entering your hex. We're not going to talk about any other kinds of reaction fire. So we want to look at the 2 different kinds, and that is reaction fire and non-CC reaction fire. And what's the difference? One is resolved on the close combat table. So you typically have a 5 CCV if you're a squad. You can add or subtract modifiers depending on different things like vehicles, motion, manable, machine guns, extra leaders, and what have you, gamma bombs. And the other one, non-CC, is resolved on to kill table or the IFT for unarmored vehicles. That's the difference between the 2. Now, normally those are resolved after any kind of overrun, and or you could attempt them before they enter your hex, again, depending on certain circumstances. So just a rough explanation of what reaction fire entails. In this particular example, what we're going to do is we have infantry units here and here. We want them to move. It's going to be the German movement phase, and we have a lone defender here with an LMG and a Piat. So as an attacker, we know we want to move our infantry forward. We can probably safely say this guy's going to go here. And as a defender, you're thinking, okay, how's these guys going to move? Now, we could try armored assault. We could try just moving into the open and getting here. But we don't really know what's going to happen. So we're going to have to make some assumptions. The first thing the German player is going to do, however, is he's going to start up this vehicle. for 1, and then he's going to come into this hex for 2. Now we have to make decisions as a British player. We have a couple of choices. We can do a Piat shot, try and break that up, but that's going to put us under first fire. We could fire our LMG with our inherent firepower, and then we could maybe lay some residual fire in these 2 locations, maybe these 2 locations. Because the approaching infantry, we want to try and impede them as much as possible. Or we could hold our fire and wait for this vehicle to enter our hex, and then we can try and do some kind of reaction fire. So let's do the residual spray fire, because that's what we really want to show you. This is what I was trying to show in the defensive advanced defense concepts. And I made a mistake, and one of my viewers pointed that out, Clanky, and I pinned his comment in that video, so make sure you have a look at that. I forgot, when you spray fire, first of all, you're halved for area fire, but if you spray fire into an empty hex, you're actually halved twice. So in this particular case, we're going to spray fire. We have 8 firepower. All right, so that's going to leave 4 residual in each hex. However, we're going to do this hex here as well, which means we're going to have that twice. What that's going to look like is we're going to put 4 residual here, and we're going to put 2 residual into this hex here. All right, so we're going to first fire. Luckily, we're British. We don't cower. So we're going to leave 4 residual under the tank, which is impervious to the small arms, and we're going to have 2 residual excuse me, in GG19. All right. So per A9.52, like we said, when you fire into an empty hex, you have it again if you already have it. What that means is that any infantry that now move are going to have to take some residual fire, and it's only a 2 firepower, but it's still an extra shot that you're allowed to make, because this German's next move is probably going to be to enter this location. All right, so let's do that now. We have a choice. We've spent 2 move. We have 11 left. We could attempt to enter this location, enter the building at half of our movement costs, which is going to be another 7. So that puts us at 9, and that gives us 4 more move, which is 1/4 of our move, which is just enough to do an overrun. So we could expend 13 movement points total to do an overrun staying in motion, risking a bog, and get some CC reaction fire. So the bog could be risky. We have a chance of becoming bogged down and motionless inside that hex, which again, we're facing elite paratroopers who have potentially gammon bomb, and if we become bogged, we're going to become immobile, which means that it's going to be that much easier to kill. Or we could just pay the extra 11 MP and bypass and stay in motion, which if this guy wants to now do CC reaction fire, he's going to have to pay the extra +2 for the CCV attack. All right, so that is one example of the residual fire one. Now, if we ignore the, if we get rid of these, and we just assume the guy wants to hold his fire, again, we have the same choice. We're up to 2 movement points, and we want to come here into bypass. Now we have the freedom to do our street fighting, and we can do our street fighting ambush. Again, we did our 11 points to move into this location. We are still in motion as an attacker, and we can now do our patsy, which we pass. So now we can do our close combat versus the vehicle. So we have now the motion to worry about, a +2. Let's do a gammon bomb check. We need to roll a 3 or less. We rolled a 3, which means we have it. Gammon bomb in a bridge too far gives us a -2 to our close combat roll, like an ATM, but it's only a -2, which cancels out the motion, which basically means that we have a net 5 or less. And because It is a Stug. It only has an AAMG. Strike that. This one actually has a coax, so it actually has a 4. Means the only modifier we're going to have is 0. So we need a 5 or less to destroy this vehicle, and we failed that. So we mark ourselves with our first fire. We mark ourselves with our CC. And now we can move the rest of our German units. And because we are now frozen because of this vehicle, we can move with impunity the rest of our German units. So all that to say, once you make a choice as a defender, again, you're going to have to make a choice. Do you try and shoot this guy now, start taking on your first fire? Do you do spray fire and try and intercept his moving infantry, which are usually always going to follow up the Sleaze freeze? I mean, there's no reason why you're going to freeze units unless you're going to have infantry following up, which is just common sense, because otherwise a tank's going to die in close combat eventually. Or do you hold your fire and wait till him to enter your hex and then try and take him out in some kind of street fighting, close combat snoop? So here's some examples that Peter has in his article. This basically lists, really worst case, how it can get. Different situations, and you can see the modifiers here. So if you look at situation 1, that's pretty much what we just did. You have a Mark III or 4J, no, Panzer 3J, and you have your base CCV of 5, and you can see what the results are for basic squad. Now it gets worse. You add in a later, it gets a little bit better. Look at the bottom one. You have a buttoned up half track with a 447, and you're looking at a base 9 just to immobilize a vehicle. An 8 or less, and you've wrecked a half track vehicle. So you can quickly see as a defender how it's not necessarily it's not as bad as it could be. Don't be afraid just because they're dropping vehicles beside your units that you can be paralyzed into an action. Just because they freeze your units doesn't mean that you can't react in enough time to at least get something out of it. Again, with this Stug, once it moves into position, yeah, you're pinned in effect, but remember, you can always do something before it gets that far. Whether you can do street fighting when he's in your hex, you can maybe shoot him before he gets to your hex, you can maybe leave some residual fire before he gets to your hex for follow-on troops, or something along those lines. All right, so the takeaway for this video is just remember you do have options before he actually gets into your hex. And with any luck, you'll be able to roll really well and take his vehicle out in CCV when it actually enters your hex. So I just wanted to make a short little video and show you guys that it's not necessarily as bad as you may think it is, and it's not something to be terrified of when it actually happens. There are ways to overcome a vehicle bypass free Sleaze.